Alrighty, welcome back to another XeroLinux Meetup style video. And today I got with me the one, the only Derek from Distro 2.
Hey guys.
Nice intro,
How you
eh?
doing? All right.
Wanted to make it a little bit exciting because I'm excited. I love to have you. Last time I was your guest, today you're mine.
All right. Well, I mean, that's part of doing these kinds of things is the collab, right? I scratch your back, you scratch mine, right?
Yeah, it is. So I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself since I guess all the people already know who you are by now. Uh,
Yeah, I'm just a guy that makes videos about Linux and free and open source software. That's pretty much it. From mostly a desktop user's perspective, not a professional in IT or anything like that.
Speaking of, since people know you know DTOS, for example, it's a very famous project. It's everybody talks about it in the Linux world.
Not that famous, but
in the small niche of a world that is Linux. What do you do on a daily if you're not working on DTOS? How do you use your Linux on a daily?
As far as like the software I use or just workflow,
Yeah.
well, obviously most of what I do on a computer involves this video content creation, right? Is mostly making videos. So I've got a 3-monitor setup. So I've got to have multi-monitors for what I do because I want to be able to record my desktop that takes up a monitor. But at the same time, it's kind of weird to record your desktop and not see how it looks in OBS. So I've got to have a monitor with just OBS on it, right? So I can actually preview what I'm actually recording. And then, of course, I've got the desktop where I'm actually doing stuff. And then on a third monitor, I could have show notes or, pulse audio volume control or whatever it is I need open. So that has been something that I've actually been a multi-monitor user for probably 8 or 10 years. And when I went from 1 monitor to 3 monitors. And I can't go back to just using 1 monitor because once you get used to it, it just makes so much more sense. Because before, like if I was doing something where let's imagine I'm writing a thesis or a dissertation or something. So you've got your word processor open, but you need to occasionally look up stuff in a web browser. Before, you would have them both full screen on one desktop and you would just have to Alt-Tab, I guess, to get between them. Where now, I could actually have the browser full screen on 1 monitor, the word processor on 1 monitor full screen, and I don't have to trade off between only viewing one at a time. I can still be in the word processor and still be looking at the web browser with the information I was looking up. So that really changed my workflow. And I can't imagine making videos without multi-monitors. I know most YouTube creators probably only have 1 monitor, but if that's what you're doing, if you can afford to plug in a second monitor, because every computer these days can at least take a second monitor, it will completely change your workflow in a good way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a multi-monitor user or...
I am indeed. I went from 1 monitor to 2 monitors, and then I gifted myself a 3rd one. Thanks to Apple, working for Apple, because the 3rd one cost me quite a penny, $1,000. Not that it was $1,000 worth, because I started getting burn-in after only 6 months of use. And it's one of those ROG Swift monitors, 1440p monitors with 165 hertz refresh rate. I was like, yay! And G-Sync, I get to experience G-Sync. Only 6 months after using it, I wasn't using Linux yet, but
Is this going to be a story where Linux killed your hardware? Is this going to be?
No, this is...
You don't think Linux was responsible for it?
I wasn't using Linux by that time. So I didn't know anything about Linux or anything. I was still...
Because this was a common problem many years ago when I first started getting into Linux. People could actually permanently damage their monitors if they were configuring Xorg the wrong way, for example. It's not something we deal with nowadays, thankfully. But that was
we do.
one of the things is, Linux has gotten obviously so much easier. A lot of people these days imagine Linux is this hard, difficult thing that only programmers and, elitist and arrogant people can run. But trust me, it was completely different 15 years ago. If you think it's hard now, right? It was a completely different world back then.
Well, speaking of Linux damaging your displays, you just reminded me of a video I just saw yesterday of the kernel 519.11 causing refresh rate issues and potentially damaging displays.
I did see some news articles about it, but it was only on certain distributions, right? It wasn't that particular kernel, because they patched it so quickly. I don't think it's going to affect that many people.
True. Yeah, I was just mentioning the fact that it can still happen.
Yeah,
it can still happen.
Yeah.
But
thankfully, when these things come up, one of the things about open source software, right, is immediately people are looking at the code, they can spot what's wrong, they can patch it.
Yeah.
And then especially like the kernel team, they're immediately going to push that out. So if you were on any responsible distribution, so any of the big distributions, you're good.
Yeah. You mentioned it, and that's the beauty of open source. Mm-hmm. Like if you were on Windows, good luck. If you were on Mac,
well, Windows has bugs in it, like critical bugs that they know have been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
And Microsoft won't fix. They're not interested in fixing it, or maybe it's just too much work. And the community at large, they don't know about it. You can't read the source code. You wouldn't know about the vulnerability that's there anyway, right? That's the difference between proprietary versus open source.
And with Windows, for example, you have to wait for a major Windows release to tell you we fixed 20 to 30% of those bugs. That's 80% of bugs not yet being crushed. And like Windows 12 now coming in 2024, 25.
A lot of people like to, I'm seen as this free and open source software zealot. And I'm really hard on these proprietary software companies like Microsoft, for example. Like, you don't really know what Microsoft is doing to you under the hood. You don't know if they're doing anything bad with their source code. Or for security reasons, I trust Microsoft to give me a secure operating system. Well, that might be the case. I can understand people that want to make the argument that Microsoft maybe has their best interests at heart as far as security. But at the same time, I'd still like to see that source code just to make sure, right?
Well, I am an ambassador of something that goes along. I still have that cable around my neck. But I'm an ambassador of an operating system is what is as stable as you make it to be. Windows can be stable if you use it the way they want you to use it. Same goes for Mac OS. So, but we don't want to use operating systems the way corporations want us to use them. We want to use operating systems the way we want to use them. So that's where Linux prevails against the competition. But for me, I still use Windows because I will say this forever until my last breath. And come at me, people, kill me if you want to. But I will say this until my last breath. Gaming on Windows is still better than gaming on Linux. I know Linux is making strides into making it possible and more doable, but it's still relying on too many layers. There's one thing relying on another thing, relying on another thing, relying on another thing to just in order to give you a better experience. If one thing breaks, you're gone. Windows for gaming rarely breaks if you use it just for gaming. I keep Windows just for that.
Well, there were there were people that voiced their concerns in the early days of Steam on Linux, and then eventually Vulkan and Proton and all of this stuff. And some of us actually voiced the concern that trying to make Windows games run on Linux, while that's nice for those of us that want a game, right? It's not necessarily good for Linux, right? Because we're not making these game manufacturers actually have to port their software to us, the Linux user, right? They're still just writing their software strictly for Windows, and that's the problem. And then because now we have Steam and Proton, they have no incentive at all now to port their software to Linux, because we've come up with these hacky kind of ways to make their Windows-only software work on Linux. And I don't know if that's necessarily, I mean, there's pros and cons to it, I guess. It's not a strictly black or white situation, but there's certainly some negatives to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people mention that.
Well, when it comes to Proton and all these softwares, they are the people who made it possible for the Steam Deck to exist.
Right.
Without those, and even Valve hired, or I don't know if hired is the right word, but they're in collaboration, working in collaboration with Glorious Agrol, the creator of Proton, to make the official Proton version much more viable for the Steam Deck. But still, Proton GE will exist because there are certain patches and certain things that Glorious Agrol has more experience with, since he's been doing it. Since he's been doing this much longer than Valve has. But those two in cahoots with each other are making gaming much better on Linux. I'm not fighting this. I'm not against this, but you have to temper your expectations. A lot of times in Linux, especially in Linux, you have to temper expectations. This sentence is very important in the Linux world. When you're using Linux, there's a lot of things you should expect, and a lot of things you should not expect. Do not expect for Linux, any distribution, no matter what distribution you're using, to be stable to a certain level. It has a certain level of stability, but it's not super stable. The biggest enemy of Linux, what is it? It's hardware manufacturers.
And for the most part, I mean, that's really what holds us back, is a lot of device drivers are still a pain.
That is.
Graphics, Wi-Fi, I mean, that's it.
Expecting users to ditch the desktop they have or the laptop they have just to go spend more money to buy a Linux compatible version of that desktop or laptop is expecting too much out of people.
Yeah, well, the hardware problem is, we mentioned gaming would still be better on Windows. Yeah, if you're a hardcore gamer, you should just use Windows. Let's be real, because everything that you would buy is designed only to work on Windows, essentially.
Yep.
So we're not just talking about the software, but all this RGB, keyboard, mice, and your gaming chairs and headsets and controllers and all of that stuff, all the drivers for that stuff is Windows only.
Yep.
Thinking you're going to plug any of that stuff into a Linux box and having it work, not going to happen.
Not going to happen. That's the biggest thing that's pulling Linux down. But we are so lucky. We are so lucky, especially if you are using an Arch-based distro, to have the AUR. Why? Because I mentioned it, I think, multiple times, but I have a G15 keyboard that dates back to 2000 and whatever, which has a driver for Windows, but that driver has since been updated and no longer works with that specific keyboard, because Logitech, or Logi in some areas, released another G15 afterwards that is much smaller with color display and whatever. They updated the driver since. It no longer supports my keyboard. It supports the second version of that keyboard. So on Windows, it doesn't work anymore. So it's dead. It's just a regular keyboard on Windows. But there's someone on the AUR who reverse engineered the driver and gave my keyboard a second lease on life.
No.
So
we often get this on Linux as well, where device drivers, they have a shelf life, and sometimes they remove drivers from the kernel or remove drivers from a repository for equipment that you still have. And the good thing is, usually if there's enough people in the open source community that still have that device and want to keep it working, usually somebody will come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Some kind of bash script or something that will get you that driver for that device.
Yeah, that's what made me stick to Linux and never again use Windows as a daily.
Well, you can't do that on a proprietary operating system.
No, you can't.
So like, it's impossible. What you just described, that can't happen.
That cannot happen on Windows, for example, or Mac.
That device just will never work on Windows again, and there's nothing anyone other than Microsoft can do about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm loving the fact that I can see my health and my ammo when I'm playing a game on that tiny display on my keyboard because I remove the HUD and everything when I'm playing FPS games. I don't want this occupying space. So I can still see them on my keyboard screen. You can do that on Linux. That's why I love Linux.
And when we're talking about devices being compatible with Linux, it's really a very small amount of hardware that just doesn't work on Linux. And it's usually really niche stuff. Like when we talk about keyboards and mice, we're not talking about normal keyboards and mice. Anything that has a graphical display, which is what you're talking about, there's a driver that runs that display.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Or some of these RGB keyboards and RGB mice, they have drivers that control the light shows that go on with these devices.
As they call it, the RGB puke. But my keyboard, my Asus ROG keyboard, is not supported by OpenRGB, that little tool that exists on the AUR. It supports my motherboard RGB, my GPU RGB, my RAM RGB, but my keyboard, no. I don't know why it's not supported. I know it had a very short shelf life. Asus pulled it off of the shelves only 1 year after making it, but I'm still waiting on it to be supported. But I am lucky enough to have internal memory on that keyboard. I can go to Windows, create my profile, save it, throw it on the keyboard itself, and then switch to it via key bindings on the keyboard itself. So, but still having developers on the AUR reverse engineering some drivers to make them work. But you mentioned niche. It's not niche. A lot of content creators use GoXLR, for example, as their mixer of choice. That's not.
Oh, yeah, but again, I mean, there's macro keyboards you could.
Yeah.
It's normal macro keyboards, but the fact that it has the lights and everything with it is the problem with the GoXLR.
The GoXLR.
Because it has the display right on it.
The display
changes on the buttons.
And the fact that you have more granular control, because when you see the control panel on Windows of GoXLR, it's so customizable. You have so much access to so many things. But when you come to the Linux part of things, you can do stuff with macro keys, but you cannot do the same level of things that you can do on Windows with the lights, for example. Like there's a lot of things you cannot do with with macro keys. So you have to start limiting yourself with what you can do on Linux. You can do some stuff, but not everything.
Well, that's not a Linux problem. That's the GoXLR folks
they don't.
They don't want to support Linux.
Yeah,
and then that particular device doesn't seem like it's as complicated to make work on other operating systems. Like if they wanted to support multiple cross-platform operating systems, they could. Yeah, they could very easily do it. They
prefer where the money comes from.
Right. Well, again, it's also the crowd. If it's mostly, I won't say it's for a gamer crowd, but a lot of people that stream.
Yeah.
Which is for live streamers, typically. Yeah. It's not necessarily for pre-recorded content creators like me. It's for people that need to quickly change scenes in OBS on the fly while they got stuff going on. Live Twitch gamers is typically what it's.
Yeah.
Again, gaming is typically a Windows-only thing anyway. That's why they cater to the Windows crowd.
Yeah, that is true. But another thing I wanted to mention is the fact that using Linux is like using Windows but with more open doors. It's kind of like the Windows firewall. Because the Windows firewall, they close one door, but they leave everything open. He's still not blocking anything. So basically, it opens doors that Windows otherwise have closed. So you want a solution, it's always there. You're always going to find a solution or someone out there that that has a reverse engineered the driver or an application to control your keyboard or your mixer or your lights or whatever. All you have to do is spend some time reading, researching, but I am 99% sure you're going to find something for your hardware on Linux. But
well, most hardware, again, this is one of the improvements we've had in the last 15 years, where nowadays I would say most of the important hardware, the core stuff, like you're not going to go buy a desktop computer or a laptop that Linux doesn't work on. Yeah. That's practically impossible, right? Linux supports
a lot of stuff,
all computers, right? You're not going to have problems with, displays, monitors, speakers, keyboards, normal keyboards and mice, not the ones with weird stuff attached to them. You're not going to have problems typically plugging in USB microphones, USB webcams. All of this stuff just works on Linux. Well, that wasn't the case years ago. Yeah. Like a lot of this stuff has really improved. Printers. When I first started in Linux, it was hard to find a printer that worked on Linux. I mean, there were printers that worked with Linux, but most printers did not. You were more apt to go buy one and it didn't have a driver for Linux, and now it's just a paperweight. You got to return it and go to see if you can. But now it's a little bit different. Most of the big printer manufacturers do support Linux in some way. There's some that still don't.
Yeah, like Ryko.
But it's not hard now to go to Walmart and find a printer that has the Tux logo on it that supports Linux.
Yeah. So, and speaking of which, did you hear the latest news about Debian changing their code of conduct and their acceptance of proprietary software?
Yeah, that's been something they've debated since the beginning of time, practically for years. They've been going on about this because Debian has always been one of these. It's not technically like 100% free Linux distribution because they still use a generic Linux kernel.
Yeah.
So it's not a FSF approved, distribution.
No.
But it is about as close as you can get without being one. And when Debian came on the scene, the very first releases of Debian were in 1993, I believe.
Mid to late 1993, yeah.
Yeah. And they actually named their distribution Debian GNU/Linux.
Yeah.
Not Debian Linux, Debian GNU. It's till this day. If you go to their website, that's the proper name, Debian GNU/Linux, in deference to the free software movement and the fact that they don't want proprietary software in their repositories. But at the same time, it does cause issues with those people that, for whatever reason, the hardware they have requires proprietary software. And if you don't have that proprietary software, that hardware will never work. And that's part of the reason why Debian, for example, has to have the generic Linux kernel, because it's got the binary blobs, the proprietary firmware that, for example, most laptops, many people don't know this, the Wi-Fi chips in most laptops do not have a free and open source driver.
No.
That's all proprietary software. And if you wanted to run a strictly 100% free Linux distribution, free as in freedom, no proprietary software, you cannot have Wi-Fi on that laptop, not with that chip that's currently in it. You would have to take that chip out, go buy one that had an open source driver, replace it. Most people are not going to do that because you're throwing away good hardware to go buy another one just for ideology to run a fully free operating system. As much of a zealot as I am, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to throw away hardware that's working just to run free and open source software because I'm much more responsible as far as ecologically. I'm not throwing away equipment that works, because that's just leading to more garbage and waste. And it's like, But yeah, I mean, Debian adding, some proprietary stuff, I can understand.
They went as far as changing their code of conduct just
Yeah.
just to be able to completely switch. But
There's no reason that every Linux distribution, in my mind, every Linux distribution should be able to be 100% free if the user wants, or as proprietary as you can get if the user wants. Like if I want to enable some non-free repositories, just make it a click of a button or whatever. And I actually think this is one of the things I don't like about the Free Software Foundation approved distros, things like GNU Geeks and Parabola and things like that, is most people can never run those distributions because their hardware does not support it.
Yep.
I've got an NVIDIA card, for example. I need the proprietary drivers for NVENC. I mean, that's why I bought that $1,000 card, right? I have to have that, but I can't have that on GNU Geeks, for example, or the Wi-Fi on a laptop. And they should just allow people to tick on a box to get the non-free drivers if they need it. And if they don't need it, I'll run your 100% free distribution.
Yeah.
But it should be easy for people to make that choice. I don't want to prevent people from running proprietary software if they need it. Yeah. I don't want to, make people run proprietary software when they don't need it either.
Because the hardware manufacturers don't, not all of them, like only maybe a handful of them make free open source drivers.
It's really just graphics cards and Wi-Fi chips that's the problem. That's really the only thing holding us back for the hardware. Yeah. For most people.
Yeah. Like, for example, I recently had a user telling me, I have the TP-Link Wi-Fi card that I use because it's Wi-Fi 6 and whatever. I was like, okay, let's. What chip does it use? After a lot of the discussion, we figured out what chip, because he's not he didn't know. So we figured it out, and I told him it's non-free. It's non-free proprietary driver. So I pointed him to the non-free proprietary driver, and it worked for him. A lot of people don't understand this fact of Linux. The fact that Linux as a whole is free open source, but when it comes to hardware, there's a lot of situations, like 90% of the situations, where you will need, either for Wi-Fi or graphics card, you will need a proprietary non-open source driver. So a lot of,
but that's changing a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean,
Intel Wi-Fi cards now have free open source.
Intel and AMD have changed it to the point where I think NVIDIA, obviously the big holdout, but I think because of Intel and AMD open sourcing a lot of their stuff, NVIDIA will eventually have to do this to keep up, because I think enough people recognize the benefit of open source that NVIDIA can't stick to that old school closed source model forever. Eventually, they're going to have to change.
Here's a tidbit. Something nobody knows yet. But since releasing the 4090 and the 40 series graphics card, on their box, now NVIDIA puts compatible with Windows, Mac OS. Mac OS. Oh, God forbid. Compatible with Windows and Linux.
Yeah.
They added Linux as compatibility. So that might be hinting to something coming.
Yeah, but that might just mean that there's a Nouveau driver that the open source community has out there. I mean, I hope not.
I hope not.
That's selling a false dream right there. That's.
But when the reviewer read requirements, Windows, Linux, the regular stuff, he just glossed over it quickly. But when he said Linux, I just paused. I just had to pause the video. I was like,
well, that's a little bit misleading, because obviously there's going to be some issues on Linux, but also I think they recognize the fact they need to give some lip service to Linux because of Steam on Linux. They know gamers, or some gamers, are running Linux, so we got to start marketing to them.
And maybe they were mentioning they meant the proprietary drivers by that.
I hope so, because if they're talking about Nouveau.
No, I've used Nouveau, and there was someone who told me I have a desktop with a GT210 card, like a very old desktop with a GT210. I told them, well, good luck running anything but Nouveau on that thing.
I think I actually had that particular card, the 210. That was I'm talking many years ago.
That's early 2000s.
And before I was running Linux, yeah.
Yeah, early 2000s, and I had that card as well. Now I have the 710 in one of my desktops, but that desktop is just a storage server.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, you're going to be running Nouveau. That's all you're going to be running, because there isn't not even a proprietary driver that runs that thing. It was like, I'm able to run what's it called? COD. What's COD?
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. Yeah. Call of Duty Frontlines 2 or whatever it was called. I can run it on that thing. I was like, so
yeah, I bet it's bad though. I bet it's really bad.
You can run Delta Force on that thing. Yeah, you can. Delta Force is it dates back to that card.
Man, that card's old enough. I bet Super Tux Kart would kind of choke on it a little bit.
Yeah. So I was like, good luck using this on anything more than Nouveau. But still, for me, for example, people ask me, why don't you switch from NVIDIA and go to AMD? It has an open source driver. I was like,
yeah. And to be honest, I probably will only buy AMD graphics cards from here on out. The only reason the last computer, my home computer, I had to buy an NVIDIA card is because during the pandemic, it was just tough to find any cards.
Yep, true.
And at the time, I waited almost 3 months for that computer because they couldn't find parts, especially the graphics cards. And finally, they were able to source an NVIDIA, I think 3060 is what I have in that box. And it's like, yeah, just send it to me. I don't care. AMD, NVIDIA, whatever. At this point, I just need a computer.
But for me, I cannot switch to AMD until AMD, in their wisdom, start creating a control panel of sorts so I can control my graphic card from Linux. They give me an open source driver. Yes, okay, it works out of the box. Yes, and all wins for the Linux people.
Doesn't AMD have a little GUI settings?
It's only for the AMD Pro proprietary.
For the Pro driver, so the proprietary driver. Okay, yeah. I knew I'd seen one before, but
only for the proprietary.
I've never played with it, so.
Yeah, no. So I was like, until the open source version of the driver comes with a control panel, only then will I switch, because I'm a hardware person by trade, and if I cannot control my hardware the way I want, I'm not going to use that hardware. So if AMD doesn't have a control panel to control the settings like anisotropic filtering and all that, because controlling all that via the game is not pure, it's just a placebo effect kind of thing.
Right.
So if you really want it from the low level to disable anti-aliasing, anisotropic filtering and blur and all that, you need a control panel. And there is not even a third-party tool by any developer out there that works for AMD graphics. So I'm like, yeah, until that happens, I'm not switching from NVIDIA. At least with NVIDIA, proprietary as it is, I at least have control over that. Not that those controls work most of the time. It's more visual than actual functionality, but well, at least I have them. I cannot, for example, whatever I apply on some cards, I have the older 710, like I said, and a 650 Ti, which use the 470XX drivers instead of the latest ones. For example, those, I cannot get rid of tearing. There's no way to get rid of tearing. So
it's always been a problem with NVIDIA.
Yeah.
More so than AMD is the screen tearing on Linux. Oddly enough, because the NVIDIA cards, in many ways, are more powerful, better cards than the AMD cards. That's not an issue as far as quality. Certainly, now with gaming, it's not as big of an issue. But like, if you were a professional Blender artist, for example, 3D animation stuff, you would never buy an AMD card. You would always buy an NVIDIA card just because, mainly of the NVENC, and all of that stuff, right? But oddly enough, as cool of a technology as NVIDIA has built into those cards, things like screen tearing on Linux is still an issue, especially in one desktop environment among all others. KDE Plasma. No, that is always, like 9 times out of 10, when you see an NVIDIA user on Linux complaining about screen tearing, it's Plasma.
You hit me in my heart.
And it's always been there and will always be there. When I have tried Plasma in the past and had NVIDIA cards, which I've always had them in my home computers because this computer had NVIDIA, and 2 computers ago I had an NVIDIA card in that one. And yeah, every time I tried like a Plasma distribution on physical hardware, that was one of the things I always noticed is that screen tearing. And it is annoying. It is annoying enough to make you, if you're new to Linux, go back to Windows.
Yeah.
Or in my case, hop to a different distro, try a different desktop environment. So,
you hit me in the heart because XeroLinux is KDE,
and it's really been that way for years.
Yeah,
it's not a new problem. It's been that way as long as I've used Linux.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I can say for 100% certainty that on my 1080 GPU, NVIDIA 1080, I don't see tearing. I just install any Arch-based distro out of the box. Once I install the NVIDIA drivers, proprietary NVIDIA drivers, and I enable my profile because I have it saved. I enable my profile, tearing disappears. It only has tearing on my older cards. On any older card prior to Pascal, you have to battle. You have to go in the ring and battle the drivers to get rid of tearing. Whereas with AMD drivers, it's just a config file. Add the lines, save it. You're done. Tearing is gone. With NVIDIA, good luck on older graphic cards. At least in my experience, because I have the 1080. The others are older. I have nothing newer. I don't know anything about newer cards. So, but yeah, I want to switch now to a subject that's near and dear to my heart. It's setting expectations. Setting expectations when people switch to Linux, coming from Windows, switching to Linux. In my mind, users have to temper their expectations. Don't expect anything to work right out of the box on Linux. With Windows, you go to the device driver, you install it, everything works, everything is cool with the world. But especially when you try to use Arch, one of the biggest culprits in the Linux world, not culprits as in a bad thing, but where you should really temper your expectations is with Arch.
You're making Arch sound like a supervillain.
No,
like
it's not a super
Marvel
villain.
Comic or something.
No, by any means. No, I love Arch, and XeroLinux is based on Arch because of the freedom it provides more than other bases. But users coming from Windows, they expect Linux, to Arch Linux specifically, and they expect it to behave just like Windows. Install the operating system, install the driver, and up and running. I'm up and running in 5 minutes. No. And even if you are up and running in 5 minutes, you were lucky enough to have it up and running in 5 minutes. With Arch Linux, time is a major factor, because during your usage of Arch Linux, there will be a point where there will be a spike where everything collapses, like recently with the grub issue, that luckily enough, Mr. Derek here, being on BIOS, did not see. Lucky. But all of
that's why that's really one of the reasons why I'm such a Luddite when it comes to technology, not just with hardware, but with software. I'm a slow adopter to new things. It's because I avoid a lot of the problems sometimes that crop up.
Yeah. So you are going to have problems. Don't expect it to be a smooth sailing experience. You might be lucky, like some users out there, but a lot of us who use EFI because it's a new technology, it's the way to use new hardware, but you are going to encounter issues using Arch because of the nature of Arch.
And a lot of things default to that EFI installation anyway.
Yeah.
Where I made the conscious choice to go with legacy BIOS.
Yeah.
Where
you have to be...
not that was necessarily the right or wrong choice. No. It was just a choice I made. It just happened to work out for me.
Yeah. So in case you're the type of person who likes, like me, who likes to be on the latest hardware and the latest software, Arch Linux is a rolling distro. And what is a rolling distro? It means that you're going to get the latest version as soon as the developer hits submit. on a package. So
Yeah.
this is a reason why. This is like when the grub issue happened. That was a moment where Manjaro shined, shined, because they held back the package. Oh, did that go in their favor? That went into their favor big time. But for us who rely on upstream, we don't have our own packages.
Well, I mean, it's the reason why stable, long-term support distros, things like Debian, for example, I mean, that is the whole idea behind them is, hey, grub breaks, well, we don't have to worry about it for the next 3 years or whenever the heck the next Debian's coming out, right? So you know it's never going to affect a Debian user.
Yeah,
but of course the trade-off is our packages are old.
Yeah,
right.
You're never going to be up to date. But
there's pros and cons to everything. Exactly. You just have to make the choice that's right for you. For me, I like having the latest software, and if it breaks, I made that choice.
Yes, same with me.
And I accept the fact that I made that choice. I don't blame other people for me making that choice.
That's where the castle crumbles.
Right.
Who do new users to Linux blame?
Well, a lot of times they're going to blame the distro maintainer. Sometimes they blame the Linux kernel team. Sometimes they blame Linus Torvalds himself. They blame people that really have absolutely no culpability at all in some of their choices. Right.
Exactly. So when the grub issue happened, the only people we had to blame were the Arch people, not the developer of grub. We cannot go to the developer of grub and to tell them, "Oh, you broke grub for me. You broke my computer." No. Who is?
It's not even like the maintainers of grub even are not to blame for this stuff. This stuff just happens. The software that depends on each other naturally sometimes will break each other.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like a house of cards, right? Linux, GNU/Linux, the distribution has, I don't know how many packages you have installed on your system. I have probably 2,000 packages installed right now on Arco through Pacman.
Yeah.
That is a lot of programs trying to work with each other. And if one
breaks,
gets out of line, the whole thing comes down, right?
Yeah. This is why now I recommend all users do that, and maybe you agree with me to a certain extent, but you are on a different spectrum, but a good one, not a bad one. Use distro agnostic packaging system like Flatpak and app images.
I have. We've talked about this recently on my channel on the chat we did a couple of weeks ago. I'm using a lot more app images now for things I don't want to roll.
Yeah.
Because even Arch users, if you have a workflow that you depend on, certain programs you depend on, there are programs I don't want to update because I can't take the possibility of them breaking. So now there are a few things like Kdenlive and GIMP and things like that where I depend on them every day. And I've had those break. The Kdenlive, many times I've had Kdenlive break on an update in Arch. GIMP recently, I had a bad update with GIMP where it was a crash fest all the time. I can't have that because I have to use those things every day to do what I do. So now app images, I have a working version. It never gets updated.
Yep.
Pacman, I just remove Kdenlive and GIMP and things like that, OBS, whatever from Pacman. I just app image all of that.
Yeah.
That way I can have the rolling stuff and I can have the stable stuff. It's not like you've got to stick to one model. You can do both.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to talk about. You have two amazing package models, which packaging are Flatpaks and app images. You can combine the two. But if you want to have the least amount of issues, go with either those two or both of them if you want to. But
and there's actually, I mean, there's many models, but
those are the main
one
ones
that you could also do, and one some nerdy tiling window manager users would be familiar with, would be building stuff from source.
Yeah.
Right. That way, it's not, your package manager has no idea that program was ever installed. It doesn't know anything about it. So things like all the suckless software, like DWM and ST and things like that, when you build it yourself and it's correct, you never have to touch it. Your system will never change it, and then
That's
which is really nice on some distributions, especially things like Gentoo, for example,
yeah.
where you don't want as many things installed through a merge because of the compilation times.
Yeah.
That's when you want to have some other method to get your software.
Yeah, but still, when you said build from source, there is an updating tool called TopGrade that would upgrade your source stuff from source, because it detects Git repositories, Git cloned repositories, and it will update those. But
yeah, I wouldn't want to. I've got so many Git repositories that I download. Yeah, I wouldn't want to. That would be bad trying to.
You can disable it in the settings, but you have to read the man pages, which nobody reads. And you and I agree on that. Nobody reads and even know the existence of man pages, but users, you are using Linux, read the man pages. There's something called man and the name of the package. It will give you a full documentation of the various flags and everything you can use with it and how you can disable, like TopGrade. That's what I'm talking about. In XeroLinux by default, if you run the up all command that I copied from Eric, but when you run the up all command, up all, it means update all, meaning update everything. So I aliased it to TopGrade. So it's going to update.
So is that the it upgrades your AUR packages and
AUR packages, Git repositories, Nix, even Nix.
I was about to say snap upgrade and flatpak upgrade. We're just run them all in one command.
Yeah,
I like that.
All in one command. And I noticed lately that it even updates if you are using, like me, instead of Rust, use Rust up. It will update Rust packages as well on your system. It will update Go
I was about
packages.
to say, then you would have to add all of the programming language specific package managers like, pip and gem and cabal and all of that. You get them all in there.
They're all included by default in TopGrade. It updates Python, everything. I love even your hardware firmware. If you have NVMe SSDs in your system, those have firmware updates. It will update those as well. It's a lovely tool, but it even updates what's it called? The container.
Docker,
yeah. It even updates Docker containers, but not everyone wants to update their Git repository.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things.
Yeah,
that is a dangerous command because, like the programming language specific stuff, usually it's people's projects they're developing. They may not want that stuff built, or like I mentioned, app images. The reason I use app images is to not update.
True.
I don't want those things to update to the next version. That was the reason I grabbed them.
Yeah, it doesn't update app images.
Right.
That's good because they're not connected. But TopGrade is an amazing tool, but as you said, it's dangerous. Very dangerous.
Because that's like a nuclear weapon you're unleashing on your system when it's trying to do all of that.
You have to configure it before you use it. I configured it for my users. I am very knowledgeable in that area. I know that users don't want to update Docker. They don't want to update stuff like that. So in the next release, in the December release of XeroLinux, it will exclude Docker. I forgot to exclude Docker. A user came to me recently and said, I was updating your system with your alias upall, and it was updating my Docker images, and I had over 100 gigabytes of Docker images. I was like, oh, I forgot that. But I configure it out of the box, not to update certain things, so users don't have to complain. But you have to configure it yourself afterwards as well. I could forget, like I did with Docker, to exclude some stuff. But it's like you said, a nuclear weapon that you unleash on your system. But it's there. I am not dumb enough to make it the only way to update your system. There's the regular update command, and which users have on the top of their heads. Update.
Because I could think like compiling stuff from source, for example.
Yeah,
Dependencies change, some of the tool chain gets updated. Some things are not going to compile correctly.
Yeah, sometimes,
if you try to recompile everything.
Yeah, like recently happened with half of my packages. There's a lot of dependencies that just disappeared. Right. So don't use that command. Only use it when you really know how to configure it. There's the
just put a warning, like when they run it, just have a confirmation at the prompt. And it's like, hey, you know what this does? Do you really want to run it?
Yeah, that's
yes or no. That way, if they run it, hey, well.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do for the next release. Yeah. But there's the update command that just runs yay-syyu. That's it. That's all it does. It just updates your AUR and your normal packages.
Just have that. Well, I mean, they could do it at a TTY, but in a graphical environment, you could just have it pipe into a K dialog box and just with a warning. It's like, hey, that's you really wanting to run this?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. But yeah, there's nuclear weapons, and you have to know. You have to. That's what I meant by temper your expectations. There's a lot of decisions that distros take that are not very user friendly, and when the users see it, they think that the distro is broken or something. The only way you can set your expectations is by reading. You cannot expect to understand something without reading, and this transitions into the next subject, which is I'm good at transitioning. Wow, which you mentioned in your recent video, is how to ask questions correctly.
Yeah.
Let the users know what you meant by that.
Well, the fact that most users, when they post support questions on the internet, whether it be on forums, IRC, chat, Discord, Reddit, the overwhelming majority of questions are just bad questions. They don't really tell you what the problem is in any meaningful way.
No.
A perfect example is my laptop runs Linux. I'm having a problem with the display.
Yeah.
That's the question. That's the whole post.
Yeah.
Well, what in the hell does that tell me?
Nothing.
That doesn't tell me what distribution you're running. Are you using Xorg or Wayland? What graphics card do you have? What driver for that? You could have included all of that up front. And then the people that might actually have a solution for you would offer you a solution. But without that information, I can't even begin. So that person that asked that kind of question is probably not going to get a response. If they get a response, it could be a negative response. That's the kind of thing that makes people that sit in support forums all day respond with, go read the manual or something snarky, like, hey, this is not the way to post. Go read our FAQ on how to post. It's just that kind of thing is annoying on the internet. Because this is the kind of thing that literally that person could have spent 1 minute writing a proper question to save them hours later. Because now, okay, what you told me is not a real problem. Now I have to ask you questions for the information you should have posted anyway. And then I've got to wait for your response. And then I can give you that response. And then, we waste so much back and forth. If you'd have just asked the question in the right way the first time, again, hours are saved. You could be back up and running on that computer with a solution much more quickly.
There's also the fact that they do not search for a solution prior to searching forums, searching Discord, searching other places for somebody else who might have had the same problem with.
My favorite is, I've got this error message, but they never post what the error message is. It's like, if you just give me the error message, I have some idea of what's going on. I got this error when I ran this command. What was the error? What was the actual error? Word for word, copy it, paste it in that thread.
The problem with copy pasting, that brings me to another issue. The problem with copy pasting, some people just copy paste 50 pages of a terminal output.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, even copy pasting, they don't know how to do. They just, you want to copy paste? Okay. Copy paste.
Yeah.
You can pipe that into it. There's a command where you can pipe the result, run the command again that gave you the error, pipe it into a TXT file that you can attach to the thread, then which the developer can read, and then he will give you a solution, because the error output most of the time, 99% of the time, includes your system configuration.
Well, if they need all that information, which sometimes they do ask for the whole output, and if it's a lot of output, use something like Pastebin, which is a website where you paste a large document, and then in a forum like Reddit, for example, you can just post a link to the Pastebin. That way, it's better formatted, and you can actually read it on Pastebin, where on Reddit, you got a lot of weird formatting that goes on, and it doesn't display text like that very well.
Exactly. So when you want to,
or something like Twitter, where you can't actually post, a large amount of information, you would have to use something like Pastebin because you're so limited on characters.
Yeah, and not only say I had this error and just attach a thing, describe what you did before, and tell us that if you did the research, a certain amount of research, and tell us if those were helpful. Where did you try them? Didn't you try them? There's a lot of information, verbose, as we call it in the Linux world. There's a lot of verbose information that you can include. But if you don't search first, as I call it DDG, because it's DuckDuckGo, if you don't DuckDuckGo or Google for the uninitiated, who don't care about privacy.
I'm a Brave search guy these days, but
yeah, same thing. So if you didn't search first, you're going to be asking the question, and the answer you are going to get is a regurgitation of the same answer solution that was posted there. But in a lot of times, like BigPod mentioned on the monthly chat, where not BigPod, I mentioned to BigPod, was that the guy couldn't, the Linux cast, Matt from the Linux cast, couldn't get something to work because he followed 10 different people's solutions. So he couldn't get it to work. Well, the solution was very simple. So there's a lot of contradictory solutions, and
right.
So one solution works for some people, but other solutions works for others. So not the same solution for everyone. So you have to read, you have to test, and this brings me to a fact that annoys me a lot, is when I tell people, they think I'm elitist or I'm negative when I say this. When I tell them I don't have the hardware to test, so I cannot confirm nor deny if this solution works. So the reason I don't give you the answer is I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Right.
Not having the hardware is highly susceptible to the fact that I can give you a solution that will end up completely wiping your system or breaking your system. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be responsible for bricking your system. So if I don't have the hardware, all I can do is tell you
I don't have the hardware. I mean, that's
I don't know.
Yeah, that's all you can say.
Yeah. And people don't accept that as an answer. They want a distro maintainer to have all the solutions in their back pocket.
Yeah, but that's not your problem. That's their problem. We talked about managing expectations. One of the things with running Linux, I would say with running any operating system, to be honest, but with running Linux especially because of the free and open source nature of it, everybody pretty much is a contributor. We're just contributing our free time. We're not paid in any way to help each other, right? We're just doing this out of the goodness of our hearts. So if you run Linux, you have to expect to do the work yourself for everything. Yes. You have to be your support channel.
Yeah. And
you know how many times in the past, I would say 5 years, that I've asked a support type question on a Discord channel or subreddit or forum?
You are special.
I don't think I've ever asked, and not in many years. You know why? It's because what we talked about, the proper way to ask questions, typically when you actually go through the proper way to ask a question, you've already discovered what they would have told you anyway.
Exactly.
If you read the error message and then pipe that thing into Google, do a Google search, you're going to find past threads where somebody else had that same problem, and that will fix your problem. Or if it doesn't, well, you try that solution, it doesn't work, you can scratch that off the list, go to the next one. I can always figure out my problems. And this is not because I'm some special person or I'm super smart or anything like that. No, I just do the work.
Yeah.
This is not an intelligence thing. This is all about just doing the work. A lot of people don't want to do that work. And if you're not one of those people, then being heavily involved in tech in any way is probably going to be frustrating for you.
And did you notice that most of the times when we pipe a Linux-related question, we almost all the time land on Stack Exchange?
Oh, yeah.
They have the answer.
I'm always on one of the Stack Exchanges, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, the information they have there. But basically, to sum it all up, manage your expectations and manage your expectations. Number 2, ask the right questions while doing your research. And third, and most importantly, RTFM. Read the effing manual. And especially with Arch have this Arch wiki that is the most beautiful place to find how things work. Not solutions. I'm not saying solutions. I'm just saying how things work. It allows you to understand how things work so you can troubleshoot yourself much easier than without being armed with that information.
The Arch Wiki is both the greatest thing about Linux and, in some people's opinion, the worst thing about Linux, because the Arch Wiki is such a fantastic resource of information. Pretty much anything you want to know, you can go read about it. But at the same time, because it's such a fantastic resource, when you ask a question that is easily able to be looked up in the wiki, people are going to refer you to the wiki. And then those people are going to be seen as arrogant, smug, elitist a-holes. They told me to go read the manual, go read the wiki. Well, yeah, the answer's there. Why wouldn't I tell you that? That's not me being mean. I'm telling you, your answer is in that page. Go read that page.
Exactly. And
short of me going to your house and personally fixing your computer for you, that is the best answer I could give you, is the link to the Arch Wiki page that has all the information for you.
Exactly. And I even went with some users. This is something I'm not going to say gonna, I'm just going to say might include in one of my patron tiers. That's going to be the most expensive tier. I will provide support when I can via TeamViewer. Give me access to your computer and I will run the commands that need to be run. I will do whatever I can via TeamViewer. I will provide this service only for my highest tier patrons. I'm thinking, this is just an idea.
Yeah, I would be careful with that.
Why?
Because you could do something to damage somebody's computer and they could hold you.
Only when I know there's a solution.
It would be better if any command that they were trying, that they entered that themselves and not you.
No, I'm not going to say I'm going to type the commands. I'm going to ask them to type the command only when I know 100% that this solution would work.
Let them be responsible for any data loss, not you.
True. Right. Use it with responsibility.
Right.
But that's an idea I have on top of my head. But still, sure, that's what I want.
I mean, you could meet them on a Zoom call to talk over their problems, direct them to the proper place on the wiki, things like that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they need to make whatever decisions on their own.
Yeah.
And understand that whatever consequences are solely theirs, right?
Yeah, true. I might do it this way, but it's an idea because I need to start coming up with ways to monetize the project without being directly asking for money. But with that aside, now I want to talk about what do you think about having too much choice in Linux, in the Linux world. Is that true to a certain extent? Is that untrue? And why?
Well, I mean, that's pretty general. If we're talking about, are we talking about distributions mainly, or
distributions?
I would say there probably are more distributions than there need to be. Now, is it a problem? It's only a problem in that people that are new to Linux get confused by it. People that have been around for a while, they know the 10 or 12 Linux distributions, the big ones that have been around, you know, that they're going to be around. They're stable. They take security and things like that serious. You know, the major players.
Yeah.
We all know those distributions, right? But when you have a dozen different new distributions crop up every month,
yeah,
from just random people, which anybody can make a Linux distribution. That's part of the freedom with free software, is anybody can fork it. Anybody can create their own forks of, especially Debian and Arch. There's so many. That's why there's hundreds of Debians out there, right? And that's great that people have that freedom, because that's a learning experience for that person to create their own distribution, or maybe they had a special case, special need that they could only achieve by creating their own Linux distribution. But at the same time, you have more than 300 distributions listed on DistroWatch right now, and probably 100 more in the queue waiting, because they keep a waiting list because so many distributions appear and then disappear so quickly. Keep a waiting list around. That way you don't list something and then have to delist it, right? Most of them are going to disappear before they ever get onto DistroWatch, just from being on that waiting list. And yeah, that's confusing to a new Linux user, because they don't know the big players in the Linux space. They're all the same. The 300 distributions on DistroWatch are all equal in their eyes, because they wouldn't know any better. Where obviously, if I asked you, you know, what are the 5 biggest desktop Linux distributions, you know, the major family of distributions, you know, some of the names that'd come up would probably include things like Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, Arch, SUSE, you know, just off the top of my head, right?
Yep.
Just because we know that. Where a new user is going to see Joe Bob's Linux and Billy Bob's Linux and, you know, Mary Sue's Linux, and
Hannah Montana Linux.
Right. And maybe this is the one I should try. And it's not maintained at all, or it's been dead. Hannah Montana, that distribution has been dead for 13 years.
Yeah, but how would they know it was dead for 13 years?
Right, exactly.
They would.
So, yeah, I mean, the choice, there is, I guess, that negative if you're brand new. But if you've been around for any length of time, then it's not an issue at all.
Yeah, like I saw a person come to me and he said, I wanted to try Linux for the first time. I installed Ubuntu.
Uh-huh.
Ubuntu. I was like, that name alone just is a mockery on its own.
Yeah, I don't even know what the hell that is.
No, yeah, you should watch the video. It's so funny. Oh, and I forgot his name, but that YouTuber couldn't stop laughing just pronouncing the word Ubuntu. It's for anime watchers, and
they have to be careful though, because Canonical does not allow anybody to create distributions using that
name
unto part of because of their family of distributions. So, but of course, this is probably some meme or something that somebody doesn't care, or, you know, is not worried about being sued.
What's more confusing is the naming scheme. You got Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Lubuntu, Zubuntu. When you just giving those to the user, he's gonna.
Well, now they've thankfully, the new ones going forward. It's been this way, I think, at least the past 5-6 years. Is every new desktop flavor that comes out now, they just call it like Ubuntu GNOME Edition, Ubuntu Cinnamon Edition, Ubuntu Budgie Edition, where, you know, those funny names, we've had enough of those, right? Yeah. We're running out of the alphabet. Right?
Yeah. So it can be confusing for a new user, especially when you have similar named distributions. But like in the example of XeroLinux is not a distribution. XeroLinux is a custom configuration of Arch. It's not a distribution, but since we have no other means to call it when we release it out in the world, we have to call it a distribution, a custom distribution. But in essence, it's just a custom configuration on top of Arch Linux.
Well, that's all any distribution of software is.
Yeah.
It's essentially your own configs. It's your own framework built around
a base.
You know, the mother project. Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. Many people imagine a distribution as something much more complicated than it is, which it's not. Which is why there's been literally thousands of distributions that have come and gone over the years.
For me, there's only 4 main distributions. For me,
Slackware?
No.
Gentoo?
No. For me, the major distributions are Ubuntu. Debian, not even Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a custom configuration on top of Debian. For me, it's Debian, it's Arch, it's Red Hat, and what's it called? The fourth one. I forget. It was on the tip of my tongue.
It probably was Slackware. You just forgot about it.
Maybe no.
I don't know.
Void.
Void.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's only those four.
Void gets the nod over Slackware. I didn't see that coming.
Those are the four major distributions in my mind. There's no more than that. Everything else is just a custom configuration of those.
Well, they certainly.
There's LFS, but
they all, even the ones you just named, they all are essentially. They can all trace back to Slackware, essentially, or many of them, the Red Hat-based distributions, you mentioned Red Hat, but things like SUSE, Fedora, I believe were originally...
Slackware?
I believe so. That's how they originally started. Of course, they came up with RPM and the package management system. But yeah, obviously, Slackware and Debian being so old, a lot of the stuff we actually are using now, originally, even if they're not now based off of Slackware and Debian, or they were independent distributions. You mentioned Linux from scratch.
Yeah.
Which typically, if you go to DistroWatch and you see based on, what distribution is, if it says independent, technically, probably they built it off of Linux from scratch. Which I don't know why they just don't say Linux from scratch. Why independent?
There's a lot of independent, like for example, Manjaro. They call on some websites they call it independent. KOS is independent, and I know some of the developers of KOS. They're independent, but they're not really, because they're dependent on the. For example, they use KDE Plasma, but
right. I mean,
their own fork of KDE.
It's subjective. It's like, Debian and Ubuntu. Debian and Ubuntu are quite different as far as. Ubuntu has its own repository. They build all their packages off of Debian packages, but at the same time, they're not a one-to-one. You can't, for example, just switch repositories from the Debian repositories to the Ubuntu repositories and vice versa and expect not to break your system, right? Because they're not, that's not like the community spins that most like small teams do, where I'm essentially 100% compatible with Arch, for example. Debian and Ubuntu have veered quite a bit from, what they're doing. So there are different levels of, is Ubuntu Debian? Well, yeah, but at the same time, it's also not.
Yeah,
so
true.
You don't want to ever confuse people, because I've actually seen people do this in the past. I've had people ask questions like, can I just switch the mirrors from one distribution to another?
No.
That's like, no, never, ever do that. I don't care how compatible you think your distribution is to another distribution. Even if I run Gentoo, but I want to try out this Gentoo-based distribution, can I just add the mirrors?
No.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Like in the case where they want to Kubuntu, they want to add the Lubuntu repositories. And
typically with the Ubuntu crowd, they want newer software. They're running the LTS. Well, can I just add the Debian SID repository just to install what I need?
Well, you can.
Well, you can try it, but...
Technically you can, but the results...
You can, yeah, but the results may vary.
Yeah. So I want to transition to the before last subject, which is desktop environments. Desktop environments. I know you use a window manager. Which one is it?
I'm in Xmonad.
Xmonad. Most
of the time, yeah. I've got a bunch of window managers installed.
There's
mostly tiling window manager. I'm typically running a tiling window manager, though, no matter what.
But desktop, if you were to use a desktop environment, not a window manager, which one would it be and why?
Well, this is a question I get all the time, and it's one that is easy to answer, but also at the same time, people won't appreciate it.
Please say
I could run any of them, because I'm not going to run them the way a normal desktop environment user might, as far as like a new to Linux user. Like I like tiling window managers. Yeah. So I literally could take, we'll take the two most popular desktop environments on Linux, GNOME and KDE Plasma. I could easily use either one and make it the exact same workflow. Well, not the exact same work, but pretty close to the exact same workflow if I wanted to.
Yep.
It'd be a little trickier because just the way desktop environments are built, they're all this one environment. You know, I don't have a lot of choice as being able to swap out certain components. It's all kind of tied into to itself. Yeah, but I could easily still use my standard run launchers like dmenu. I could still have my key bindings to open things, close things, move windows around, and still mostly spend time in a terminal. If I'm at text editing, I spend most of my time in Emacs. It really doesn't matter. I know that's not a great answer.
It is.
But it literally does not matter what desktop environment you give me. I could easily make it work.
Actually.
And I would have no issues. Actually, because I don't have that workflow most people do anyway.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Actually, your answer was amazing. You just indicated that even if you switch to a desktop environment, you can make it your own. That's the flexibility of Linux. Like if you want to use some parts of Plasma, but you are a tiling window manager user, you can still add that. Like there's a plugin in Plasma called Kwin Bismuth. That plugin just turns your Plasma into tiling window manager without having to give up Kwin. Because
the plugins for KDE and for GNOME to tile, they're okay. They're not great. They're not a proper tiling window manager in some respects, mainly because they don't treat monitors and workspaces.
That's because of X11.
But that's just because of the nature of that's always been the way desktop environments have worked. Window managers work where when I plug in monitors, they're their own workspace.
Yeah.
Where on a desktop environment, all my monitors would be one workspace.
That's the biggest problem, especially with
And
KDE.
that's the biggest problem is when you're trying to move windows around your monitors. A tiling window manager handles that beautifully because each monitor is its own workspace. Where on a desktop environment like GNOME or Plasma, all three of my monitors are one big workspace, and I can't really move things around as efficiently as I'd like to. That's the only really negative to those.
Yeah, like for me as a Plasma user and only Plasma user, I put up with all its shorthands. But
that said, getting back to the workflow, that wouldn't matter that much because, like most computer users, I mean, 95% of the time, you're typically working one window full screen. Typically, you're not really just opening a million things and constantly moving them around. Like for me, well, we talked about content creation.
Yeah.
Have OBS open, maybe a web browser open on a different monitor, maybe a file manager, or if I'm doing nerdy stuff, I'll have a terminal open, maybe more than one terminal open a lot of times. Emacs open, and that's it. The desktop environment. What panels are there, menus are there. I'm not going to interact with them anyway, or at least very, very rarely.
Yeah, it depends.
So it doesn't matter.
It depends on the workflow. But for me, being a KDE Plasma user, and I'm an X11 user because I still am waiting for Wayland to get there. It's getting there, but it still needs a long time. But I'm not going to talk about Wayland. My issue is, yes, I have to manually move windows around, and I have three monitors like yourself. This is a big issue, but for me, desktop environments always beat window managers. Why? Because I'm not a keyboard ninja. I am a mouse ninja. So, and a trackball at that. And people find trackballs weird. I cannot use a regular mouse. Just a trackball, like yourself with your keyboard. You have a strange keyboard, but I respect
the split keyboards that I use.
Yeah, I respect that because this shows. I don't know how they call it. I don't know if ingenuity or something. It shows that people are smart when they use non-normal stuff. Something that's not normal to the regular crowd.
Well, the split keyboards, really, when you start using them, they're not weird for the sake of being weird. They make a lot of sense because of the thumbs.
Yeah.
It's like, why on a normal keyboard is that gigantic space bar there?
Yeah.
For both thumbs. Are you telling me that these thumbs, which are easily the fingers that can move around the most, have the most motion. Because I can't control more than one key with 2 thumbs. No, I've got 8 different keys I can control with my thumbs on this keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, I control my mouse with my thumb.
Right.
So I have my own workflow, and I got used to the issues of KDE. Like, God forbid I click to open terminal, it never opens on the same monitor twice. It just, you open it once, it opens on one monitor. The second time it opens on another. It has never ever behaved, and that's on X11 because I had
that's part of. You can set workspace rules, but the problem again is the fact that all your monitors are always the same workspace.
Yeah.
If you could have each display be its own workspace, that problem goes away.
Yeah. I wish I could become a window.
You can actually get that once you switch to tiling window managers full time.
Yeah.
That's just the default behavior.
I was going to say, I wish I could become a keyboard ninja, but I can't. I cannot even.
You know what? It's really not even about the keyboard. Even though you do use the keyboard, it's usually like really simple stuff, like hitting a simple key binding you use all the time for your web browser or run launcher. I guess it's not like you've got a million things to remember.
Still,
I can. And it's not like you can't use the mouse. It's not even like you can't use floating windows. I can drag windows around with my mouse and keyboard.
But
all day.
The tiling window manager, especially for a writer like I am a visual writer. I like to drag things around instead of having to create a config file, a 1,000-line config file just to get my icons in my polybar or the new bar that comes.
Well, polybar.
Yeah,
it's one of those things that if you're one of these people that focus mainly on aesthetics, like trying to make something like really attractive, and you're more focused on that than usability, that's what a lot of the people that use Polybar are focused on. But Polybar is kind of unnecessarily complicated. It's not a program I would ever use. There are some window managers that are kind of built specifically for Polybar, like BSPWM.
Yeah.
You're kind of expected to use Polybar with it, or no bar at all.
Like,
but most normal tiling window managers have their own bar built into them, so you don't have to worry about that with like Awesome, Qtile, even DWM, which is suckless software. You'd expect it to be as minimal as possible. Has its own panel, has its own bar, right?
Yeah. And there's another issue with KDE that made me, because I'm going to switch to the final subject for today, because I want to finish it on a light-hearted thing. I'm using LatteDoc, even though the LatteDoc maintainer gave up on the project because he has a lot of more important things to do. It's still community-driven now.
I have seen people posting bugs.
Yeah.
So it is starting to see some bugs crop up, but people are trying to fix them.
Yeah, and the Nicolo, whom I did an interview with, said they are going to pick it up. They just needed to finish with Academy and all the more important stuff. Then they are going to pick it up at some point. But until then, it's still community driven. But I use LatteDoc to avoid all the issues that creep up with the defaults of KDE. Like the default KDE panel has its own shortcomings. He even made a video admitting all the issues that he didn't have time to fix. So to bypass all these issues, I'm finding other ways and other tools to use to stay away from these things. So and XeroLinux has received a lot of praise lately because it is so well optimized. And what I'm going to say now might be a little bit taken the wrong way, but you can do this with anything. If I could do it with KDE Plasma and circumvent a lot of the annoying issues, you can do this with any desktop environment, any distro, anything. That's the beauty of Linux. So, like you said, you can take Plasma and make it into a tiling window manager. You can take a tiling window manager and add a desktop on top of that.
Yeah.
You can.
Well, there's certainly drawbacks when you're trying to take something and take stuff away from it. That's always a problem. Like people that ask me about why I would choose something like Arch Linux over Ubuntu. Well, different workflows, but I like having I like building my own desktop environments essentially with these window managers. I choose my own panel, sys tray, and things like that. Could I do that on Ubuntu?
Not really.
Yes, but there's a lot of meta packages for Ubuntu because they expect most people to be running desktop environments. So you're going to eventually try to install something that's going to pull in the GNOME desktop environment.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to run into that issue on Arch. So that's the difference, is when you're on a distro where you're building things from the ground up, that in many cases is a lot easier than trying to start with something that's given to you and try to take things away. Because eventually you're going to run into that thing you're going to try to take away.
Yeah.
That's going to cause you issues.
Yeah. Like I installed a package the other day. It pulled the GNOME desktop environment. It just pulled it. And that's the same issue with...
and if you don't have GNOME installed already, it's obvious it's going to do that, because you're going to have like 200 packages all of a sudden that it's going to try to install.
I saw suddenly GNOME boxes appear in my thing. And I have good news for app image. You as an app image user, there's a tool now that allows you watch Matt's video on that, or he linked it on Mastodon. He linked an article where it shows a tool that allows you to add desktop shortcuts to app images in your app launcher. So that could be useful.
Yeah, I mean, most app image users are going to be running the app image launcher, which does that automatically.
No, it puts them in an application folder in your home directory, but does it create desktop entries for your...
Yeah.
It
does all of that. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It moves your app image to the correct folder, and it creates the .desktop entry, so it should appear in your menu system.
I have it on my repository. Why didn't I notice that? Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, it does all of that in one go.
All right. Final thing I want to talk about. You must have your favorite suite of apps that you like to use on a daily basis over regular. I'm talking the special apps that you prefer over the regular ones that ship with distros by default. Like you use Emacs instead of...
I usually have both Vim and Emacs installed on everything.
Vim and Emacs.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite app for, let's say, video editing, if you don't use Game?
Oh, well, with video editing, I've used many. I've probably used all the open source ones, but none of them are nearly as good as Kdenlive. And Kdenlive's not perfect.
Yeah.
Kdenlive, I talked about. I like to app image it these days because updates tend to break it all the time. It can be flaky and crashy sometimes, but it's still far better than any of the other open source alternatives. The only one I found reasonably stable and has decent enough features that I could use it all the time is Blender, which is not really a video editor, but it has video editing capability. I can, and I have edited many videos in Blender before, and the issue with Blender is the render times are much slower than in Kdenlive,
and you don't have the option to use parallel.
It doesn't have a lot of that optimization and stuff that is in Kdenlive, and that's it's been that way since forever. With Blender, I don't know if they'll ever add that stuff. Probably eventually, but it's not a priority because Blender is not a video editor. At least that's not what it's mainly designed for. So if the render times were good in Blender, that would be what I use all the time. But because the render times are twice as slow as Kdenlive, and that's a significant difference. When I have to wait half an hour for something to render in Kdenlive, I'd have to wait an hour or an hour and change in Blender typically. And that's just, I can't do that. Not as many videos as I make. Right? That's just a lot more extra time spent rendering.
And are you like me? Do you use a separate tool to watch YouTube videos rather than your browser?
No, I just watch them in the browser. I don't watch a lot of YouTube these days. And if I do, people often ask me, like other Linux content creators I watch. Oh, I don't watch any of them. Not now. I spend so much time dealing with Linux and then making my own content about Linux. I don't want to watch. In my free time, like this is what I'm going to do to relax. Heck no. It's kind of like you had a real job. You go to work every day and then you come home. Would you want to also talk about work? And would you like to go home and do the exact same thing you were doing at work? No.
But for me, I don't only watch Linux videos. if I watch Linux videos, I watch you because I get ideas for some tools. And I watch Brody most of the time because he talks a lot about applications. And he does a really good job because he goes really in depth. I didn't know half the things about Topgrade until I watched his video. Because reading the man pages was okay, but reading the wiki was more difficult, especially for me who doesn't understand a lot of tech talk, dev talk as they call it. So, but I use a separate tool to watch YouTube videos to bypass the ads. To bypass.
I'm aware of some of the tools you're talking about. You probably shouldn't mention them on video, but yeah, I'm aware that there's programs out there you can install that they're in the AUR.
Yeah,
that you can
as Flatpaks as well. So I avoid AUR as much as I can these days. I just, if a tool I cannot find on the mainline repositories, I go Flatpak.
Because I use the Brave browser, I don't have to worry about ads anyway. So.
True, but I prefer to use it in a separate app. All my socials, my favorite app of all time, and I can mention that, is Ferdium. Because Ferdium allows me to open all my socials in one window. All my socials, I got not many, but
you've told me about this application many times, and I've always thought it would be interesting to take a look. The problem is I have no social media accounts that I could actually tie into the thing because I don't hang out, any of that stuff as the only issue with it. I'd love to do a video on it, except I can't. So I'm going to leave that to you.
But Ferdium is really interesting. Not only that, I open if there are web pages, like I have a script I use on my website. It's called Notes. Notes is a privacy first pastebin clone. So I can create a pasty and have it expire and self-destruct after a week, an hour, 50 minutes. I can add a password. It's all, and it doesn't keep anything on the server. It just wipes everything. So I have that. So instead of having to open it in my browser, I open it in Ferdium. I keep it because it's staple. It's a staple there. I open Skype via Ferdium, and I only have Skype. I know it's proprietary software, but I only use Skype because I have my bank in Ireland and I cannot make international calls because the rates are crazy here. And since it was open, the account was open in Ireland, so I pay 0.001 cent per minute. So I can talk as much as I want. And I got $50 that will last me a lifetime. So, and I have everything else in Ferdium. It's a centralized app to have open full screen on one screen, have it take the entire screen, and I don't need to worry to have to open Telegram, Discord, and have them all organized in a tiling style. They're all in one app. My second favorite app, I wish I could mention, but it's a video player app. But since it's a gray area, I cannot mention the name. This video player allows me to play any movies, whatever I want, for free. So I'm not going to mention the name.
You have to be careful. There's also some applications that will allow you to stream music from various sources on the internet.
But I'm a good boy. I'm using Spotify. I'm using Spotify, the free version of Spotify. I don't mind the ads.
There's certainly ways around a lot of the DRM stuff on the internet. I'm not into a lot of that stuff anyway.
No, I'm just into that for the movies.
But there is info out there for those. But yeah, and probably not something you want to share.
My third favorite and final favorite app is an app that, thank you, Eric Dubois, for letting me learn how to use this app. It's called Meld. For us distro maintainers and geeks who like to customize the heck out of our systems, Meld is a lifesaver. If you do a setting somewhere that has a setting file that causes the system to break, and you want to know what that change you made that caused the system to break was, you just compare the two files and see where you went wrong. This tool is a must for everyone.
It's a nice graphical way to see the diff.
Exactly.
If you know what,
I know what the diff is. Yeah. So it's a graphical way to see the diff, and it saved me multiple times. I crashed my system I cannot tell you how many times because I'm a maintainer. I break, and that's how I learn. So Meld is a tool that should be in everybody's toolbox. Even if you're not a maintainer, if you customize your system a lot, have it. You can compare folders even. You see which file you added and which file you removed, and get it back or remove it again. It's an amazing tool.
Many, I'll mention also, many of the better text editors out there also have diff tools where you can actually compare your two files. Very similar.
Yeah.
Meld.
Because
a lot of people, especially if you're not used to like command line Linux, many people have never heard of diff. What that is, it's comparing two files, and it'll tell you the lines that are where they differ.
Yeah, the differential app.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I'll mention one bonus one that allows me to go live and make videos today, because I'm not a person that has a lot of money that can afford cameras, webcams, and all that kind of setup. I'm using my iPhone to talk to you guys, and the thing that allows me to do that is DroidCam. It's a proprietary piece of software, but you can use it for free. It's going to limit you to 640 by 480 resolution, but I forked up the €6 for it. It's one-time payment. It's not a subscription model. And it allows me to go to make videos today. It's really, really, really good piece of tool, and it works on iOS, despite the name, DroidCam. And so that's another bonus tool that I really love. That is very useful. There's a lot of tools on. If we start listing all the amazing tools on Linux that you're never going to find on Windows.
I mean, most of the stuff, as far as the stuff I depend on every day, we've already talked about a lot of the multimedia stuff.
Yeah.
Kdenlive, OBS, GIMP is one I use every day.
I know.
Obviously, we talked the text editors. I mean, we could go into browsers and file managers and things like that.
You're not gonna like my browser.
Well, Microsoft Edge is respectable, I guess.
No.
I was just kidding. That's good.
Vivaldi is my browser.
Vivaldi?
Yeah. It was the default on XeroLinux for a while when you reviewed the distro. It was the default. It's no longer the default. It's Firefox, because the users have spoken, and I do listen. But that's not going to change the fact that I've been using Vivaldi since 2014, 2013. And all my data is saved on their servers, all my settings, basically, not my passwords. I'm not crazy enough to save my passwords over there. But I save mainly it's my settings and my bookmarks. Like this, I can install Vivaldi, log in, all my settings and bookmarks come back in an instant. And I trust their security because it's double sealed, as I call it. They're triple sealed, sorry, because it's got one password to log in, one password to decrypt, and another password to and a third password. I don't know why there's a third password, but there's 3 passwords to save your settings and stuff. But I still don't trust them with my passwords. So that's why I use an open source software called Bitwarp.
Now, these days with me, as far as browsers, I'd probably recommend 2 browsers to people, depending on whether they want to go with the Chromium ecosystem or Firefox-based ecosystem, Brave or LibreWolf.
Yeah.
They're essentially very similar as far as they got a lot of built-in security and privacy features, ad blocking and disabling all the trackers and things like that. Brave, of course, based off of Chromium. LibreWolf based off of Firefox.
Yeah.
And again, depending on which one you want to go with, they're actually very similar, other than the engine.
And did you know that Brave and LibreWolf are available as Flatpaks?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So distro agnostic, you can just have it on whatever distro you. So basically, Flatpaks have saved my life. Now I can try, since I'm a maintainer, I need to try and douse my feet into all the different distros out there. And instead of having to worry, oh, do they have that package on their repos? Do they have that package on their repositories? No, I just launch Flatpak and I have all my packages right.
It's still strange because Brave, I believe, it's been this way for a while. It's the most popular package in the AUR. When are they going to move it to the standard repositories? Because it seems like it needs to be there.
Even more important, you know as well as I do, there are laptops called Optimus laptops, right?
Oh yeah.
And Optimus is not even available on the mainline repositories. It's still on the AUR. What the? I'm like, huh?
Yeah. Thankfully, I've never had to deal with that, but I do know the Optimus users out there. That's another issue that's always been there.
That's something I mentioned in my most recent video that I pushed today, explaining what we do and why we do what we do. It's one of them being, why don't we provide support for hybrid computers? Simply because I don't have a laptop. I have a Mac.
And to be honest, yeah,
I have a MacBook. I don't know if you call that a laptop.
Yeah, I mean that's tough.
Yeah, and they come to me and they tell me, "Oh, I installed your distro and I have a hybrid laptop." I was like, "Yeah, sorry, you lost my support. I cannot provide it. Not because I hate you or I don't want to. It's I don't have a laptop. Excuse me." So there's a lot of things that should be on the mainline repositories that aren't there. Why? I don't understand.
Probably just to offload some of the work to the community rather than having the core team.
It's the higher ups.
Right. You don't want the core repository to be too big, which it's not. It's actually pretty small. The core repositories for Arch. The AUR is a much bigger place. And having the community handle all of that.
Yeah, but
it does offload, like I said, a lot of work.
Asking the user to compile, there's not even a binary for Optimus. It's just compile it yourself. And compiling it on KDE, since I'm a KDE distro, so compiling it on KDE causes issues for some users that will have no choice but to switch from SDDM, KDE's default login manager, to LightDM in order to make it to work, to get it to work. Yeah. It's because of the signature and stuff. It's very technical, but
I will say one of the weaknesses of Linux, as far as we talked about choice, where there is not good choice, login managers.
Yeah.
We are very limited on options, and all of them have problems.
And the problem with login managers, they're an essential part of your system.
What most people would actually expect to be a feature, that a piece of software that would all be on every computer, which is the login manager. We don't have any good ones. I'm just going to be honest. We don't have any good ones.
And my problem with login managers, they're not login managers. They're responsible for your display to get you to. They're responsible to get you to the desktop. If you don't have a good solid one, you're always going to encounter issues. And as you said,
really, we just have GDM, SDDM, and LightDM, and then we have a whole bunch of stuff that hasn't been maintained.
Yeah, the small stuff.
We just don't even mention them.
Yeah, like Live.
And that's it.
Like Live. Like Live. For example.
I mean, well, you got older stuff like Slim that hasn't been maintained, I don't think, in over a decade, but people still use it, oddly enough.
Speaking of which, I was happy the other day when one of my users came to me and he said, Plank died on KDE Plasma. It completely died. It hasn't been maintained in a long time, but it was still working. It was the other go-to dock on KDE Plasma. But now, since the latest Plasma update, it completely died. Now it stays in the center of the screen, doesn't have a background, and
that's a compositing issue.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Yeah. That's a problem with all docks. Standalone docks is different window managers, different compositors. They affect things differently.
Yeah, but the only dock that still lives on and works on anything and everything, it's Latte dock. It has survived all that shit. As long as
thankfully, PyCom has never broken docks. So if you
PyCom, if you're using window managers, but the Latte dock, for example.
Now you can use PyCom in a desktop, and some, not all. Some the compositor is kind of built into everything,
like you cannot use it on Plasma.
Right.
But
KWin and the compositor are all the same. Yeah, it's all.
But the thing with Latte dock, you have to be careful. Do not install the stable version ever if you're running the latest version of Plasma, unless you're on Ubuntu and you're running the ancient version of Plasma, which is 5.20. But now we're at the 5.26. But if you're running anything more recent,
well, on Ubuntu too, a lot of Plasma users probably will have backports enabled, so it may still affect them.
Yeah. So if you are on the latest version of Plasma or 5.25 and onwards, use the Git version. Either compile it yourself. There's a compile and install script on the GitHub. Just git clone and run the install script. But do not use the stable version. Even the maintainer mentioned it on his website. Do not use the stable version. That's it. Use the Git version. But other than that, I am not, as being a maintainer, that's how I'm going to end it. Being a maintainer myself, people think that I use my system unconventionally, like differently than other users. You know what I use? What I use on my, I've been on the default layout that I shipped in September since June, because I'm the maintainer. I created that layout since June, but I've been on the same wallpaper, same setup, same everything ever since. And how do I use my computer? I either use OBS to create those kind of things and my videos. I use a browser to watch YouTube, use Terminal to update and to build my packages. And I use I use Dolphin to copy files from one computer to the other. That's how I use my computer. I'm not a different user than anyone else just by being a maintainer. And there's another misconception that people have about me is just by being a distro maintainer, immediately I am a developer. They think I am a developer who knows code backwards and forwards. I know how to build applications. I can fix applications. I have the solution in my back pocket. No, I am not.
Well, I get the same problem because people imagine I'm a developer, even though I constantly tell people I'm not. Never been a developer professionally, even as a hobby. I'm not interested in developing software, maintaining software.
Same.
That is not something I want to do or find enjoyable, even though sometimes I do nerdy stuff on camera.
Yeah. Like when you started,
and people can't understand that.
Yeah, when you created the DTOS, don't you get like questions?
I didn't want to create DTOS. I resisted for a long time.
Yeah, I didn't want.
People had been asking for something like that for well over a year before I finally caved and said, well, let me show you how to do it. Because I was thinking I'd just show you how to create an installation script, create a custom repository of software, and build some packages, and I'll show you the steps. And other people would go do their own thing, because I'm really just, it's a learning experience. I don't want to maintain DTOS. I just wanted to show you how some of the steps were done. But literally, and the reason I didn't want to do that is I didn't want to be a support channel for people. I don't have time.
Yeah.
I make videos, and this takes a ton of time.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no time for DTOS.
Yeah.
For maintaining any kind of software, for developing software, unless it was my job and I'm getting paid for it.
Yeah.
But that's not, or I was interested in doing it in my spare time, which I have zero interest to do that in my spare time.
No, same thing with me. Same thing with me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
And people don't understand that. They think, well, hey, I'm just going to do DT. You could really do it and still do your videos and still have a live. And it's like, no, you really can't. You know, making videos is really a full-time job.
Yeah.
To do it right.
Yeah.
Developing software is really a full-time job to do it right.
Yeah.
I can't do both.
Like I maintain XeroLinux, and I'm starting to get into the YouTube video making group. Like this video, like we're recording right now, that's gonna be a 2-hour video. That's gonna take me maybe 3-4 days to edit. It's not a simple thing. I have to remove the I have to remove the inconsistencies, fix the audio, do all of that.
Even if you wanted to be lazy and not edit the video, at the bare minimum, to be a responsible video content creator, you would have to at least go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Just to make sure everything was okay.
Yeah.
As far as there wasn't no corruption with the video or audio in it. Even that, you'd have to go back and listen to this whole 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
And then render it, which depending on how long you're like, even if you were going the lazy, easy route, you're still talking about hours involved in what you're doing today.
Yeah. So,
and of course, depending on how much work you want to do with editing, again, obviously it could take days.
I am a very picky person. Editing takes me a long time because, like the latest video I created, you will have. Once I send it to you, you're going to notice something. You're going to notice the fact as if I was speaking on a single breath, because I took all the breaths and the microsecond pauses out of the audio. Now it's like one single breath,
Right.
50 minutes on a single breath. But it takes a
Well,
lot.
that's good because I've seen some. We've all seen this on YouTube. Have you ever watched a video and you can tell that the person that recorded that video never put any effort in editing? And by editing, I mean they never even went back to see how their video turned out before rendering it and publishing it.
Yeah.
Because there's just mistakes, corrupted audio, corrupted video. Sometimes it's just a black video, right? It's just like I've seen that stuff. I was like, how do you even? How could that happen?
And there's another lazy thing that people are doing these days. I noticed a lot of videos do it. Is they don't bother to like they said a certain word that they shouldn't have, or they the wrong name. They called something by a different name. Instead of re-recording the audio, they just put a silence, and they keep the audio in with the wrong name, and they just put a text with an asterisk with the right name.
I wouldn't even do that. Going back and re-recording something, sometimes it's not possible, but just annotate it, right? If people understand when, I would say easily 9 times out of 10, when you misspeak and say the wrong thing, people know what you meant.
Yeah, true. When they follow the flow. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So just a simple annotation. Hey, I meant this. And just pop up for a couple seconds. And I don't get overly concerned about mistakes in speech. You know?
You were mentioning issues with Kdenlive. There was one of the updates where when you go to effects and you drop down the effects to see which one you want to use, the names were garbled. They were completely...
I haven't seen that in Kdenlive. I've seen that in OBS, where OBS has, and not on my machine here, but at the one in the house, which uses NVIDIA. I don't know if that's...
No, but in Kdenlive, if I should have grabbed a screenshot, but now they're fixed. But there was an update where you go to the effects, they're called A, B, C, D, and then some garbled name.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I have this weird thing where when I pull up menus in OBS, you know, like your filters and the little pop-up box that has the drop downs, like it's all just smeared, like weird, like you can't even read anything. You can't tell what's there.
Yeah. So no, for me, it's just knowing how to do stuff. But anyway, this was a great talk. We went on for a little bit. But
we rambled,
but that's the point of these things. From now and again, we do these just to let loose a little bit.
It's hard for me to speak in brevity, right? I can't. Yeah, I'm one of these people that tend to ramble.
Yeah, same here. So
I've always, with content creation, I can't make a short video. Even on the videos I plan to make short videos, like I'm just going to make this really short 2-3 minute video, say what I want to say, and it's still a 10-minute video, 12-minute video.
Yeah, same. That's what happened to me yesterday with my video. I was like, it's a 5-minute video. I managed to make it 7 minutes. I was like, cool, 7 minutes. And then I remembered I forgot to mention that. And now it ended up being 11 minutes. So, so yeah, it happens to all of us. But there's one thing I wanted to ask you is, you know how in YouTube Studio you see your analytics and your watch times. Do you get any of your videos where users watch the entirety of the video?
No, that would be unusual. I mean, there's a very, 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 very small percent of viewers that are going to watch any video, not just mine, but most videos. Also, depending on the style of video, the length of video, like if you're one of these people that mostly make short style videos, like a minute long, yeah, you're going to have a much greater percentage of your viewers watch that. Or my average video time, if we averaged everything I ever made, I bet my average length time is 15 to 20 minutes, somewhere in that range. There's no way I'm going to get viewers hanging out that long. Some will, but most get whatever information they want, and at some point they're going to turn off and go to the next video.
Does YouTube count when you're forwarding as non-watch time or watch time? Like when they click to skip ahead, skip ahead, skip ahead.
Oh, I don't think I've never checked on that. That's a good question.
Because I make like an average of 10 to 15 minute videos, and my average watch time is between 3 to 5 minutes.
I would say that's probably normal.
That's probably because I'm still waiting for the 4,000.
I would say, it's not great, but I would say that's not unusual. I would bet mine would probably be similar, and it'll depend on the kind of content you're making. Like this, obviously, it'd be much longer form content. This is going to be at least a 2-hour video, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get anybody watching
2 hours
for 2 hours. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I'm still waiting to reach the 4,000 watch hours to be able to monetize the channel, but I'm stuck at the 1,200. It's 1,201, 1,202, 1,203. It's like it's not moving. But I guess YouTube. How long did it take you to be able to monetize when you started?
When I started the channel, which the channel had its 5-year anniversary 2 days ago, so 5 years ago.
Oh, congrats!
That was we had to have at least 1,000 subscribers or 4,000
watch hours.
Watch time. The 4,000 watch time was never a problem for me. Even the first month or two of my channel, but I put out a lot of videos, a lot of distro reviews. Those things tend to be kind of popular. People watch them. It was the subscribers. I had to wait, I don't know, 3 or 4 months to get to that subscriber number and finally get. Because I had the watch time way before I got.
Well, I'm your opposite.
Many people are. They usually have one, but not the other, and they can't figure out. For me, I just had to wait until the subscriber number hit.
I'm close to 800 in less than a year. I'm close to 800 in 6 months, but watch hours 1,200, and it's not moving because I think they're skipping ahead. It's not counting it as watch, so that's why I asked the question. So I guess I decided to make 3 videos a week, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or schedule videos for them. Like this one is going to be scheduled for Wednesday, so it gives me time to edit the video and to work on it and whatnot. And it's not too much to overwhelm myself. Although I have nothing else to do, I'm not working on the distro right now. Next month, I'll start working on the next release. But this month is a hiatus and working on the channel because I was like, it's time to get this YouTube channel of mine to get off the ground. So, and the reason I release a version every 3 months is to give myself a month of hiatus, a month to work on it, and a month to finalize it and release it. So I studied my everything. So I was a good student. I studied it. I figured out a middle ground for everything. So there's a solution, and this is my solution that works for me. So yeah, Linux is a wonderful thing, and I don't see myself stopping. I will never stop using it as my daily. And for gaming, I just put it into Windows, play my game. When I'm done, like yesterday, I played God of War. I enjoyed my time so much with it because I tried it on Linux, skipping frames and having to configure it, spend hours to configure my system to get it to run the game. Whereas these hours I could have spent playing the game on Windows.
Yeah.
So I just went into Windows. I had the pirated version. I bought it outright. I was like, it's a beautiful game. They deserve my money. So I spent $30, $20 that it cost me, and I played that game, and it was like so good to let loose and enjoy something. So
I've wasted a few hours in the past week playing the new release of Zero AD.
Yeah,
which has been awesome.
Isn't it like Age of Empires kind of thing? It's a clone, basically, an open source clone.
It's not. It's the same style of game. Yeah. I wouldn't call it a clone, but yeah, it's very similar.
I like these style of games. I remember Command and Conquer back in the day.
But yeah, it's one of those things, especially when you play against good players. It's a tough game.
It's you mean the computer, the AI, not online.
Well, I play a lot of computer AI games, but you can play multiplayer online as well.
This supports online. Zero AD supports online. It has an online community.
Yeah, it's had that for, I don't know, a few years, 2 or 3 years at least. Yeah.
I should pick it up. And you made a video of a first-person shooter once a while back.
Oh.
I forgot the name of it. If you can tell.
I've covered a few, but as far as free and open source shooters, the more popular ones are Xenotic.
Xenotic, that's the one.
Yeah.
The graphics are not great, but it's open source.
Yeah, but it's super fun. It's very fast paced, and you can find people to play with.
Yeah. Anyway, that was enjoyable. We're at our 2-hour mark.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any, as you put it, do you have some famous last words?
Well, I would say that, for those of you that are interested in trying out Linux, again, just manage expectations and just know that you need to be one of these do-it-yourselfers a little bit. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting yourself, but you do have to put in some work. And as long as you make an effort, people like me, people like Dark Zero, and the millions within the free and open source software community, we're glad to help you along as long as you're willing to put in some work. And if you're willing to do that, you are going to have a lovely time in Linux.
And my final words will be, I am very happy to be part of the Linux community. I get to talk to people like DT, like Nick, like Nikolove, and all these people that are helping out the Linux community in such a big way. And please don't be elitist minds. Help each other out. If somebody asks you a question that's already been asked, instead of shutting them down, link them in a very friendly way to the solution that you found. Be friendly. Keep the Linux community a friendly one, and make people want to join it, not be afraid of it and run away because of elitist people that don't like to help or don't care. Just be friendly. And if I, for example, as a maintainer, give you that kind of answer, like, I don't know, it's because legitimately, I don't know. I don't own the hardware to test on. And I am the kind of person that prefers to say, I don't know, rather than to give you the wrong answer.
Right.
So be happy, enjoy. And with that, I'm going to say peace out.
Peace.